Most people will be prepared by Roydan from Oak Ridge Lab. It's going to share them in the next section.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Orlando. Great presentation. We are going to start our first session now. And actually, I'm Soydan Özcan. I work for Oak Ridge National Laboratory. I'm the group lead for sustainable manufacturing technologies at Oak Ridge. And actually, we have today five amazing speakers. And each of them will have 20 minutes. So I will give 15 minutes for the speech, and I'll give 5 minutes to discussions and questions right after. And our first speaker is Mehdi Tajvidi. And Mehdi is, I would like to have a quick introduction, Mehdi. And Professor Tajvidi joined the University of Maine School of Forest Resources over 10 years now. It's 2013. And he's affiliated faculty for Advanced Structures and Composites Center, which I actually happen to be working closely. And Mehdi actually has been working on many different, probably utilization of cellulosic materials, nanomaterials in a high volume applications such as coating, packaging, and building products. So welcome, Mehdi, and looking forward to hear from you.
Thank you. So, how do you advance the slides? Someone advances for you, or? Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Found it. Okay. The green button. Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Good morning. It's very hard to follow a talk by Orlando because it's so interesting. Thank you very much for that insight. So, my name is Mehdi Tajvidi. I'm a professor of renewable nanomaterials at the School of Forest Resources, and I'm here to present something I call wood binding wood. Back in 2021, Jeff Youngblood's group from Purdue University published a paper in Advanced Material where they actually looked at the number of publications for composite materials with like cellulose, nano, and composite terms from Web of Science, I believe. And you see there is a very nice trend. So I think everyone was going to follow that direction. Around the same time, I was in California for the Nanotech conference in 2018, and I presented this paper on facts and myths about cellulose nanofibers, what to expect and what not to. Basically trying to say, wait, it's a little bit too soon to talk about those trends like that. So a few months ago, I said I would just go and read all the same data from Jeff Youngblood's group, 2021. So this is how it looked like, and then wanted to see what happened after 2019. And this is what happened after 2019, right? So when you see such a trend, there are two possibilities. One is that you have saturated the science, so there's nothing more to explore, so you can't publish anything more. Or maybe that idea was not really a very good idea, to put nanocellulose into polymer matrix. That was my understanding of that. So I'm going to give you a story of the path that I went through, and I have to give an introduction here, although everyone here is an expert. But we are talking about the nanomaterials coming from wood. So basically, you look at the scale from the meter scale up to the cellular structure of wood. And those fibers that you see on your right side are basically what pulp fibers are, right? You extract those and make paper. Then you look at the cell wall structure. Many wood scientists here, those different layers, especially that secondary layer of the cell wall, and more especially the S2 layer in the middle one, that is the thickest one. If you take a small piece of that and look at that under the microscope, you basically see like a carbon fiber polymer matrix reinforced structure, which is basically made by nature, right? And then from that, you can get your nanocellulose structure out of that. So we all know about these amorphous crystalline parts. So I just passed through that. But basically, what you get from from wood in terms of cellulose nanomaterials are basically two forms. There are some other forms too, but if you go through a chemical pathway like acid hydrolysis, mostly by sulfuric acid, you get CNCs or cellulose nanocrystals. On the other side, if you go through a more mechanical way, you get cellulose nanofibrils or cellulose nanofibers that are most look like yogurt. The one on the left looks like more hair gel. Under the microscope, the CNCs more look like rice grains, like 100 to 200 nanometers long and a few nanometers in thickness, whereas the CNFs look like ramen or spaghetti or whatever cuisine you are more interested in. But they are very much entangled to each other and are very much branched. So my talk today is mostly about cellulose nanofibers because I'm from the University of Maine and we have a pilot scale production line of that. So I need to promote that. But there has been this understanding in scientific community about the strengths and the stiffness of cellulose, and that can be easily seen from this pioneering review from Robert Moon back in 2011, where you can compare the crystalline cellulose with the steel wire, and you can see there are similar properties, even though cellulose crystals are much less dense, so density 1.6 compared to 7.8 for those. So the term where we hear cellulose is stronger than steel comes almost from this understanding, right? But there are a few caveats here because this is just in one direction. You are talking about one small cellulose crystal. It's not really like a continuous system. So it's difficult to do that in terms of the practical application. So before I moved to University of Maine, my work with nanocellulose was very limited in terms of quantities because it was very difficult to have enough material to explore some new ideas. All I had was small amounts in small vials like that. So what do you do with something that is expensive and very limited in quantity? You use it as an additive. So that's where many people started doing that, especially adding it to polymer that were like soluble in water for basic reasons, because most things are in water, like polyvinyl alcohol, for example. So using as an additive was my mindset too. When I came to UMaine, it was different because we already had a pilot scale production line for CNFs, or cellulose nanofibers. So it was, and the forest products industry was eager to find a way to utilize large amounts of material rather than just small amounts. So we all know about this value of this when you want to do something in the lab and then expand it into industrial levels. At least there are two, one between the development and commercialization, and then from commercialization to rollout, where you can actually go to, let's say, Walmart and buy something that has that product in it. The problem is that if we want to do this R&D, we think that the value of this is this, but it's actually this wide, and then this is what happens, right? And guess what you find when you go there? That's in my lab. So I live very happily in the valley of death, where a lot of ideas are born and are dead, unfortunately. But every now and then something comes out, and it can be interesting. So today I'm going to give you a story of what happened in my lab over the past 10 years. And we all know about nanocellulose and this application in different areas. People have used them like an additive for concrete and cement to improve especially flexural properties, as coating materials and absorbents, to drug delivery, to rheology modifier, all different types of applications. But in my mind, what I think is that an application that is closer to the market is the one that can make money sooner, right? So when I look at any new material system, I think there are two options for that to handle or tackle that. One is to force it into something that it can't do and fail. And the other one is to basically take advantage of what it can actually do. So, and that is my philosophy over research. I'm not trying to change things substantially. I'm not a chemist, so I cannot change things chemically, but I can find creative ways to go around problems. So another thing that I focus on in my work is that I try not to dry nanocellulose or cellulose nanomaterials, because first of all, this is the production line that we have. We produce about 3 to 4 tons dry basis of nanocellulose a day. So that's the capacity that we have. On the right side, I have a picture of our spray drying system. You can't see anything because I intentionally made it smaller to contrast the scale. We can produce about 3 to 4 tons a day and on wet basis, in wet condition, on dry basis, but you can only dry about 1 kilogram a day. So to me, if you want to make something that is good for the forest products industry, it has to be a form of nanocellulose that does not have to be dried initially. So research direction in my lab, I look at what it is good at. So again, the simple example, water goes downhill, so you make a dam and use the energy behind it. You can pump it up for sure, but it's more difficult. I try not to dry unless I really have to, which means that when the final product is made, and I want to maintain the nanoscale in dimensions, because if you ask me the difference between nanocellulose and cellulose, is that nano at the beginning. If you dry it in not a correct way, then you lose the nanoscale. There is no nanocellulose available anymore. And also, I'm trying to focus on large volume, low value products. And my background is in wood science and forest products industry, so I like to give back to the community where I come from. So this story that started back in 2014, we wrote a grant to P3 Nano. We proposed that we are going to use nanocellulose as a binder to replace urea formaldehyde in particle board panels. Particle board panels that you can find like in the pores and many other applications where there is a like 10, 15% urea formaldehyde resin mixed with wood particles and pressed into a panel. They came back to us and said, yeah, this is a great idea, but how on earth are you going to remove that much water from nanocellulose because it contains about 97% water? To be honest, I didn't know the answer. So I go to the lab and do a simple experiment. When you get the CNF in your hand and try to dewater it by pressing on it, you can't really remove any of the water because it is so branched and surface area is so large, interaction, hydroxyl groups with water. It's very difficult to take water out. But you mix it with wood particles and you do the same thing, you see that water is just released automatically. And this is the magical moment that basically caused this process to succeed, where you can change like 15% solids in a matter of seconds or minutes into 50% and more in solids content. So remove a lot of water. More importantly, what happens is that on the surface of the wood particle, you see that nanostructure of the CNF is still there. I'm not sure how I can play this little video that I have with this one, if someone can help me with that. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you for lowering the volume. That's good. The music that you hear, I legally downloaded, but it matches interestingly with the idea. So what you see here is that I'm trying to remove some of the water in nanocellulose with CNF just by pressing on it. Right, so I put in a plastic bag and I press on it, and as you can see, nothing can be separated. So next, I'm mixing it with some large wood particles. These are larger wood particles in the same size that particle board is made of. I'm mixing them again and then doing the same thing. You can move a little bit forward if you can. All right, now a little bit less back. Okay, here. Now, then you press on it, and you see that if you are careful, you see that a little bit of water is getting released, but it's not too much. Now, what I'm adding is the same amount of wood particles, but a smaller particle sizes, more specifically, higher specific surface area, right? So the same amount of nanocellulose, the same amount of wood particles, and then doing the same thing. Just pressing on that. And you see music is becoming more dramatic. It was just by accident. And when you do the same pressing, you see what is happening. And this is just clear water. There is no nanocellulose in it. Everything is stuck with the wood particles. So with that, we can move on now to the next slide. We now call this contact dewatering. The dewatering happens instantaneously when they get in contact with each other, and then you just do a compression and get the water out. So we use that idea now to make particle board panels. And as you see here, we started from small panels, of course, in the lab, and then expanded it to like 3 by 3 feet. So that one you see on the right in the press, that one, the mat is like 60 pounds of water. We do a cold pressing in like 10 seconds or so, you get 30 pounds of water out. So it's very efficient in terms of dewatering. And then that was the first 3 by 3 feet panel that we made, and everybody in the picture was happy. And then a few months later, we challenged ourselves into making one actual 4 by 8 feet panel to see if we can make something larger, and that worked also. But then we had to pause, because talking to the industry, particle board production is not a wet process. It's a dry process. It's very difficult to go to the industry and say, you need to change your production system and use this as a binder, although the properties would at least be as good and sometimes better than regular particle board. So we changed directions and went through something else, something that would be produced in a similar way in a wet process, and that was gypsum board, wall boards, drywalls. So in that case, now we can have a similar process to make those, and we started making those, tested them. This process is still, this research is still ongoing. The properties we can match much easily because that is not really highest strength. The only thing that is there is fire performance. And fire performance is the one that we are working on. Our initial tests showed that it is promising, but still work to do. So this one, we basically worked with NYSERDA, which is the New York State Authority, and got some funding there. We produced panels for a modular building system. This is a high-rise building, modular. It is a joint project between my lab and the ASCC, where they basically 3D printed the flooring system, and then we made the walls. And as you see, this was installed. The one on the left is the regular gypsum board. The one on the right is our panels. After painting and mudding and painting, they look exactly the same. So that's what we are working on now. The next phase of that includes the fire performance improvement. The other product that we have worked on is the lab scale insulation fiberboard. So we teamed up with Blue Ridge Fiberboards in Virginia, and we did lab scale production of fiberboards, insulation fiberboards. These are used for building and construction purposes. What we showed is that with using nanocellulose as a replacement for some part of the adhesive that they already have in their system, you can actually upgrade their products from regular sheathing to structural sheathing, which is much higher demand for mechanical performance. And as you see in those red circles, we have been able to get to those properties. This one we actually ran on the industrial scale. So we produced at UMaine, we produced 2 tons dry basis of nanocellulose. That was like 66 tons at 3% solids. Then we dewatered them to about 18%, shipped them in 18 super sacks to Virginia. And then in about 6 hours, we produced about 170,000 square feet of these materials. And for comparison, in this 6 hours, for the particle board in the lab, we've made only 1 panel. So that's the difference when you do on the scale. The properties actually were surprisingly better than what we got because normally you do on lab scale, it is better. You go to industry, it's not so good, but this was the actually opposite. We were able to get to the properties with only 1% addition of nanocellulose. So it was a very good idea. So the current thing that I'm doing in my lab are basically on the application focus, working on building and construction application, at the same time packaging. And by packaging, I mean protective packaging and barrier performance. And so I do call this my 2 Bs for nanocellulose. It's a binder and barrier. I'm still looking for the 3rd B because I think 3 is a charm, but the 2 Bs are currently working. So my idea was now how to combine these two together, and I'll get to that in the molded fiber section. So one other thing that nowadays we are working on, as Orlando mentioned, our foams. So this surfactant-based foaming and using Pickering emulsions and Pickering stabilizers are very known, but we are working on that in a different way. We are making scaffolds from nanocellulose and wood particles and wood flour and those things, and then we are growing. So these have their own properties, of course, for applications, but what we are doing is that we are growing mycelium into those structures. So that is an opposite way to the way that the mycelium-based composites are produced, where you inoculate the particles with your mushroom and then grow the mushroom in and out. This one, you actually make the scaffold and then grow the mycelium. I'm going to finish. Just the packaging. This is a new way to do the packaging products by microwave irradiation to make these foams. And this one is where we are combining the two properties of barrier and binder, where we have a substrate of wood particles and CNF, and then the layer of CNF on the surface. And this final one shows the industrial trial that I ran in my sabbatical last semester in Maine, where we basically showed that we can actually produce on industrial scale. We can produce molded fiber using this binder technology. With that, I thank you, and I'm sorry that if I talk too much. These are the people who actually did the job, and thank you to the funding agencies.
Thank you, Mehdi. We have time for a very quick one question, please, if you have any.
Sure.
So what is the general process to produce carbon nanofibers in the industrial scale?
I am not an expert in carbon nanofibers.
Do you mean cellulose nanofibers?
Or cellulose nanofiber. Well, industrial scale, well, the CNFs that we are talking about, they are made by a mechanical refining process. It's like a refiner that is used in paper making to refine fiber, but you just do it to extreme. You can do some pre-treatment at the beginning, like enzymatic ones or other things, to make it easier to refine and less energy consuming. But basically, we just do a refining process to make them smaller and fibrillate them.
All right, thank you very much.
Sure.